it be easier? It's C-A-G-E-R-A-G-E.
Nicolas Cage podcast.
That's all you have to do!
Hi, hello, how are you? It's Daryl, and welcome to another brand new episode of Cage Rage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. It's the podcast in which I, your humble host and guide, Daryl Edge, take you, the dear listener, on the journey to true Cage Nirvana. And what is that, you may ask? Well, it is only the simplest, humblest, most ethereal, most effervescent, most mathematical, geographical, historical, literaturical form of being that one can ever attain. And how do we achieve that, I hear you ask? Well, it's simple. We watch every film the man I call the golden hog of Hollywood, Nicolas Cage, has ever been in. So how are you? Hope you're well. Hope you've been keeping safe and sound. We are in August at the time of recording. It should be sunny, but it's not. But that's the UK weather for you. As you can probably hear in my voice, I've come down with a little bit of a cold, a little bit under the weather, but not enough to stop me from recording a banger of an episode for you today on Sympathy for the Devil, the latest in Cage's 2023 output. And I was joined by the mighty Petros Patsilivas of Caged In Quotable Connections, and some other podcast about Willem Dafoe, which I'm sure has no bearing on anything at all. No, obviously our podcast, Getting Dafoe You, where we cover the works of Willem Dafoe as well. So we thought it'd be in our joint best interests to sort of team up, put out the similar episode on Sympathy for the Devil. Obviously different intros and outros, but the same sort of great content in the middle. We cover a lot of ground on this one. We are talking about the new special effects that they're using for the background shots and the cinematography and how much we enjoyed that. We are talking about the Boston accents and whether we thought it was a thumbs up or thumbs down from Cage. This was described as Cage's most meme-worthy performance in years. I think we'll be the judge of that one. So this was a lot of fun to record. So, let's not keep you waiting too long and to get straight into this one. But if you enjoyed the episode, obviously, let me know on all the usual social medias, at Cage_podcast on Twitter, at Cage Rage Podcast on TikTok, at Cage Rage Pod on Instagram. All the links in the description down below. And if you are listening on Spotify or Apple or Podchaser, anywhere where you can leave a rating, please do let me know that you're enjoying the show. Helps the podcast grow, helps more people get on the journey as well. So with that said, let's get into it. It's Daryl Edge with Petros Patsilivas for Sympathy for the Devil. What's up? This week, it is time to take the ride of our lives in the psychological thriller Sympathy for the Devil. Cage stars as the passenger, a mysterious red-haired lunatic holding a driver at gunpoint. Now joining me on the journey to true Cage Nirvana this week to see if we should be simping for this devil or just trying to send it back to hell is Petros Patsilivas from Caged In Quotable Connections, and some podcast about Willem Dafoe. Petros, thank you very much for joining along. Here we are once again talking about Cage. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's good to dip a toe into the other pool that we're both in, but separately. And now it's kind of we've converged, right? I think on both of our cases, and this might be a peek behind the curtain for people. It's when you're talking about a film that isn't out yet, it's like I'm not in the biz. I don't know many people who have seen it, and you put feelers out online. And it's like, well, nobody's biting. Either they don't like this film, or they don't like me, or Twitter or X or whatever it is called. It's kind of died a death, and I'm getting no reach on my tweets or whatever. Or, I don't know what are they called now? Kisses? Fuck knows. But so you're not getting anything on that. So we just thought, you know what? We've got this dynamic from the other podcast, Getting Dafoe You, if those of you don't know now know. And we've both seen the film, so why not have a chin wag about Sympathy for the Devil. And I'm excited. I'm excited to chat to you about this one, Daryl.
I know, this is nice, isn't it? We are referring to our other business. It's usually Defoe-related business at the moment, but every now and then we're dipping back into the Cage pool, and we're speaking about a brand new Cage title, an exciting little Cage title as well, Sympathy for the Devil. The stills came out, and drumming up some interest. I think it's one of the weird things about this. Sounds like a humble brag, and I don't mean it to be, but when you've picked a lane of an actor to follow, and you find yourself somehow with an advanced viewing of the film, as we've both had and watched separately, and we'll get into. It's a thing when obviously there's no one else to talk to about it, and you're under embargo in a very delightful email, I will say, but I was scared to even say that I'd seen this film until the embargo was lifted. I didn't want to be sued by the American powers that be. I haven't got that kind of money. Not in a Cosy Livy crisis.
That, and like you get that thing like I've just seen it from other people doing it. I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the letterboxed, no stars, just embargo, all caps.
I saw
embargo.
that. Yeah, very nice.
That gives you like some cachet. Like people go, you inevitably get a couple of DMs off. And it's like, I can't say anything just yet. Like, all in good time, my friends. Like people kind of, who is this bigwig that we are necking with? And it's like. Just the man who sent out an email to some people and said, "Please, can I watch your film?"
I know, it's the benefit of having very kind guests who help you out and having email access. So obviously, thank you to previous guest on this podcast, Kat, who's sort of hooked us up with a little screen of McGee as well. Not for the first time. Far too kind, possibly kinder than we deserve. And now here we are, just sweating and panicking that the FBI, the ATF is going to be kicking down our doorstep. Even now, at the point of recording, the movie's had its premiere at the Fantasia Film Festival.
That's right.
It's just about to come out, so in a way, it still feels kind of a bit naughty talking about a film early.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, I don't know.
I've got to ask you, Daryl, before we kind of get into it. Is like, like you said, you saw those stills, but do you remember first like hearing about this film? Do you remember like when you knew it existed?
I feel like, because time is just a relative concept in life at this point, and then it all just blends together. I feel there's always this point with Cage, and I've brought it up before, where it's like there'll be like a period of silence for like a month, and then he announces about 10 films, and you think, Jesus wept, sweet brother in Christ. And then this was one of the various ones that sort of came out of the blue. I feel like it was announced end of 2022, start of 2023, around that time. So I think when the general news went out and those stills of him with the red hair and the red jacket. So I think there was a picture of someone who just like met him in a restaurant or something and got a picture of him in that red hair. Like, oh, what's this then? Hello.
So this film filmed, I believe, like during the summer of 2022. Oh yeah, July. So exactly like a year ago, like to the date, really. Like started filming, and I remember there's a Twitter user called Mars whose Twitter handle is at I'm a username, or like, I'm a good user. Oh yeah, I'm a good user name. And I remember them like being like, just I don't know how. Like I never asked people how they get this information. Be like, Cage is filming a film in Vegas with Joel Kinnaman, and it was kind of, and I think around a similar time, there was a whole thing as well that there was a photo circulating, like, or there soon after, of like Nicolas Cage's name on the back of like one of those director's chairs on the set of Cobra Kai, and it kind of felt like fever pitch of like, so he's just like a film that hasn't been announced, because a lot of time obviously stuff gets announced with his name attached and they haven't even begun filming, and this was like they're filming it now, and then it was like, oh, there's a possibility that Cage could be in Cobra Kai as well. So like last summer felt like a fever pitch.
Yeah, I remember that, like Cobra Cage, Cagebra Kai some kind of name I tried to pun force together. And then
Yes.
the new season of Cobra Kai came out, and then he wasn't there unless he played, I don't know, like a beach or something. And just really got into character with it, but he wasn't there. And then with all the other films that were announced, bit by bit, more stuff came out. Obviously, we finally got a trailer for the retirement plan. It's nearly been a year, and we still have no information on Butcher's Crossing.
Yeah,
which is
so that
baffling.
would have premiered at like last September at TIFF, and then like nothing. And I even know that it's got UK distribution. I think it's Altitude Films have the distribution rights in the UK for that.
Yeah,
I just have no idea what their plan is with that film. Whether I don't know, maybe they think it's got Oscar potential and they're holding out for this award season. Maybe it was too late last time.
I have to imagine there's just some kind of Three Stooges hijinks where people are just chasing a reel of film down like some kind of long boulevard as we speak. The only cut of Butcher's Crossing has been lost to the wind, and he's at the bottom of the ocean with the Titanic and that submarine. Is that too soon? Too soon? Too soon?
No. Fine, it's fine. It's fine.
And some billionaires got imploded. What are you going to do? If you're a billionaire listening, sorry. But yeah, we got Sympathy for the Devil, and then the trailer came out for this one, and I was quietly confident. I was quietly I think this could be all right. I think this could be all right. And this was sort of touted as, I think it was even the producer had sort of tweeted saying this is Cage's most meme-worthy performance in years. And, you know, again, not to sound like we're our heads up our own arses here. If anyone's going to judge that,
yeah, maybe the bloody judge of that, pal.
I'll be the judge of what's a meme-worthy performance. I'll have you.
I've been in the trenches. I said them all.
I've done my time in Azkaban. Thank you very much.
I've done your best of times. I've done your birdies. I've done Birdie's a great film, but I've done your Boy in Blues. Do you know what I mean?
I was there for the DVD stretch of the 2010s. All right, I've done it. I've done my time. So it's a very big claim to make. And this is very much a two-person performance in this film between Cage and Joel Kinnaman as well. Joel Kinnaman, he's one of those people I like Joel Kinnaman, and I hate sort of saying this. I don't mean to speak dismissively of any actors, but I sort of oh, you're that guy from that thing, and I completely forgot he was Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad film by James Gunn. Yeah. I loved the Suicide Squad. I thought that was brilliant. So the trailer painted an interesting picture, and then it sort of came along and watched the film, and I was like, yeah, that was all right. That was all right. I think I enjoyed it. I think I mostly enjoyed it. His most meme-worthy performance, obviously we'll get sort of more into it. There's definitely some Cage screaming in there.
We'll get to that. I've got my notes consist mainly of quotes of just kind of maniac things that he says throughout this film. But before we get too deep into it, Daryl, should we set the table for people and tell them who is in this? Who are the key players in this film? As you mentioned, this film stars Nicolas Cage and Joel Kinnaman. I don't think we really need to say anyone else because it's a two-man. It's like this podcast. It's two men strapped into a car, just going insane. Do you know what I mean? It's going to get to a point. I'm like, "You're not Daryl. You're that man I knew. You're that man I knew, Daryl, from years ago."
I'm just going to turn to you like, "I'm your podcast emergency now."
So this film is directed by Yuvo Adler. It's written by Luke Paradise. Fun fact about this one, it's the first film to be filmed in the new Las Vegas LED soundstage, which I think is something we can get into, the look of the film. As time of recording, we have no budget information for this film and no box office because this film has not been released. The release date is the 28th of July 2023, and as mentioned earlier, it premiered at Fantasia Festival on the 22nd of July 2023. It currently has a 7 out of 10 on IMDb and a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, based off of 39 reviews with no audience score. And that's kind of the stats for this film. And I'll hand over to you, Daryl, for a plot synopsis of what Sympathy for the Devil is all about.
Absolutely. So, the lowdown on this one. Now, before he can get to a hospital to visit his wife, a man finds himself at gunpoint driving around a dangerous passenger in a deadly high-stakes game of cat and mouse. And that is your sympathy for the devil right there. And at a delightful 90 minutes as well. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Oh, I've got so much time for a 90-minute film. Oh, I love them. I love them. As soon as the screener came through and it was 90 minutes, I was like, I'll watch this twice. Yes.
Oh yeah, or like myself, I watched this 3 times. I'll say this up front. I'm not too butthurt about it. The wounds have healed. I watched this a second time because I was lined up to interview the director of this film, Yuvo Adler, and a day before was told, "Oh, he's not doing press now," which like I put it down to the fact that he's like solidarity with the actors and the writers. He's not promoting his film. I don't know. It could be that he's lost bottle in this film, which would be unjust because it's a fun film. But yeah, so I had that happen, and then when we agreed to do this, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna bloody watch it a third time.
As is your right. As is your right. Get your money's worth. You got it for free. As is your right to do so. So obviously reviews are still coming in as well as we sort of speak. It's almost as if when we're recording this and when this film is released, there's some kind of massive other film event going on, some kind of plastic doll, atomic bomb related film event of the year that's going on. I'm sure that's got nothing to do with it, but but you know, here we are. But this was a nice change of pace for this movie as well. I think I did see an interview that Mr. Adler had done elsewhere, and he did say he can't all just be Barbie and Oppenheimer. If you like something punky, that's our film as well. I think there is a bit of like a punk spirit to this there, a bit more low down, a bit more gritty as well. I saw that Cage described it as flashy, dark, and amusing, which I think I'd agree with.
Yeah, like this is kind of perfect counter programming, and I imagine like they kind of know this isn't going up against Barbie and Oppenheimer. This is kind of like, and we're at a time, we're kind of crossroads in films anyway, where we're going to see like a lot of stuff being pushed back, if not like till like next year because of the writers and actors strike. A lot of films have like halted production and stuff like that. So like, it's just nice, if anything, to have new films to see. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like let's not take this for granted, because it's gonna come to a point like where unless, do you know what I mean, they're kind of straight to streaming, we're probably not gonna. Do you know what I mean? If it revolves on cast doing interviews, we're probably not going to see them films for a while.
Solidarity with the writers and the actors, of course. I mean, I hope we're not considered scabs by being UK podcasters, are we? We're not scabs. I don't want to be a scab.
We're not scabs. No, because we're not. If we were going hot after writers and actors right now, if we went and now an interview with Joel Kinnaman, like we would either have to say this was recorded pre-strike, like going on date, or if we've managed, he would be the scab, not us, but still we would look unfavourable for sure.
Let's just stress that is a hypothetical. Joel Kinnaman, if you are listening, we do not think you're a scab. We think you're a very lovely actor and man.
No. It's totally hypothetical. You're the Rick Flag of my heart.
And we will wave your Rick Flag until the end, Kinnaman.
Yes.
Make no mistake about it. So this movie, getting into the movie now, obviously this is a two-person movie. This is Kinnaman, this is Cage. I think about a third of this movie, maybe 35, 40 minutes, is probably just them two in the car, just interacting and driving around. And I will say as well, because I think, this sort of comes into the whole overarching conversation of the movie as well. The cinematography of this movie, as you touched on earlier, with the LED sort of environ walls, I think it was at View Studios, VU it's called.
Yeah, View Technologies, I think it is.
View Technologies. I mean, I will say, like, the cinematography, Stephen Holler and the cinematographer on this, I thought it was, like, excellent. It was really good. Like, the lighting was, like, moody and atmospheric, and it seemed realistic. And the first time watching, sort of prior to any more in-depth research, I could not have told you for any money in the world that most of this movie was filmed inside a studio.
No. I would have assumed that this, like, it's kind of got the feel that they are kind of on the outskirts of Las Vegas, just kind of like filming super late at night. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of felt like this was like a load of night shoots, just like kind of running, gunning, like great stuff with like a rigged up car that's kind of, because it doesn't even feel, at times it feels like Joel Kinnaman is driving. You don't get the sense of, you don't get that, like, I guess some of it is technology has moved on as well. When you remember, like, you would get it and like it looked like the background just like moving behind them and stuff like that. This, and I think it uses like element, because I can only surmise that the budget for this isn't kind of like a whopping. Do you know what I mean? This isn't,
of course,
this isn't a whopping budget, but it uses that to its advantage. It's all kind of like dimly lit, and you kind of get like the lights in the background and stuff like that of like, and the fact that it's set in Vegas, but like doesn't utilize like the strip or anything like that. And I kind of love it for that. It weirdly reminded me of another Cage film, which is The Trust, which kind of again is like Las Vegas set, but like a Las Vegas that you don't really get to see on screen. And it's interesting in the kind of oeuvre of Cage, right, that you have leaving Las Vegas, where it is kind of like you get a bit of the strip, but you also get some of the like seedier aspects of Las Vegas. And then you've got Honeymoon in Vegas, which is like, we're on the strip, baby. Do you know what I mean? It's like Elvis impersonators and dancers and stuff like that. And like,
impersonator in sight.
And then like this is this is kind of another just that he can have these films that are in such an iconic place, but they all kind of feel vastly different. And this is one of them that kind of, well, as we've learned, doesn't utilize Las Vegas at all because it's in a fucking studio.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like really old saying this, but I was like, there was like quite a brief, like 3-4 minute clip sort of put online by the studio who did it, and saying how they sort of achieve the effects, and it's the environment walls that they're using, and it looks great. Like like the cinematography is like very good. It feels like intimate, and then you feel like you're in the car. You feel like Joel Kinnaman is actually driving. Like you said, I think far gone away from the days where it's just like a single camera at the front of like just the front of a cut out car chassis and someone driving on a straight road and just moving their hands all around the wheel to simulate driving.
Yeah.
So, I don't toot the horn of car scenes in movies every day, but I think if this is the future of car scenes in movies, then I think we're going in the right direction, certainly.
So the like, sorry to sound ignorant here, but is the kind of studio setup that they're in similar to like the Volume, the way that they film The Mandalorian, like this kind of, just walls of LED, like a kind of cylindrical walls of LEDs that they go inside of, or how is it set up?
Yeah, it seems to be pretty similar to that. That's probably the closest comparison that there was. It seemed to be like it's obviously that they've pre-filmed sort of driving down roads and stuff, and obviously just the way it's sort of reflected with all the lighting and the rigs and the setups and stuff, it just looks very realistic. So obviously no little Grogu's in this one. Nicolas Cage is not he's not the Mandalorian, although I know he said he's a Trekkie at heart, so I don't think we're going to get him in Star Wars anytime soon, unfortunately. But But no, like obviously then they've got like the camera sort of in the car as well, so you do feel up close and personal, and I think it all helps to add to. There is like an underlying tension throughout this movie, which I think is executed pretty well. I know I've seen. To be fair, I think as soon as the trailer came out for this one, there was just a lot of comparisons to, oh, this is basically Collateral. This is Collateral, but with Nicolas Cage. And I know of Collateral. I don't think I've seen it, or if I have, it's been a very long time since I've seen it. But I went over like the description of it, and it seems I get why people say it's basically Collateral. It's two men in a car.
Yeah, as soon as you've got two men in the car, like Michael Mann's Collateral is going to be like kind of like
the
high benchmark for it, and that is kind of like a work of kind of great digital photography. It's kind of Michael Mann messing around with that, and like it is kind of like it's a standout like Tom Cruise performance, right? Because it's Tom Cruise not doing what Tom Cruise does. He's playing like a bit of a shit. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he's not running around and jumping off of things.
Yeah, he's playing a man who's probably more he looks a bit more age appropriate with grey hair, and he's kind of like this assassin as opposed to like fucking jumping out of helicopters. And
Tom Cruise, notoriously the enemy of gravity, does not care for being on the ground. Does Tom Cruise? Yeah. If he ever has his 2 feet on the ground at any one time, he gets very anxious and he books a plane immediately to be in the air.
That comparison though, it's also lazy. It's like that thing. As soon as the trailer came out for Pig, right, we've been here in the kind of near past with Cage. It's like as soon as the kind of premise of Pig was announced, it's like, oh, so what you're telling me is it's taken with a pig, and it's well, there are so many stories that can be told with that. Like something is taken from you, and you go on a hunt for it. And like we saw with that film, it's a vastly different and moving film than Taken is. Do you know what I mean? Like I would say the speech that Nicolas Cage gives in the kind of center of that film compared to Liam Neeson's like, I have a set of skills like conversation. Pig nearly brings me to tears. Like Liam Neeson's speech kind of like makes me laugh. Like they're completely different. And like I think
Taken didn't make you cry.
Yeah, because it didn't get to see you two in concert. Come on.
Another film where you two are used as a plot point. What are you two doing?
Yeah, I know. But I think there should be scope for people to make like it's a great concept, right? Just two people in a car is like that. I'm happy for that to be a genre. I have one person in a car. Do you know what I mean? I'll watch Locke any day of the week with Tom Hardy playing an angry Welshman driving down the motorway. Yes, please. Right?
I think it speaks to that thing though. When one film is very popular for doing a particular thing, and obviously the John Wick thing is obviously the most apt comparison. Like anytime there is animal in peril or someone is a bit vengeful, like, oh, this is like John Wick. I think even with like the Retirement Plan trailer now, people are saying like, oh, this is Cage doing John Wick. It's like, no, he was never doing John Wick. He's doing a character who's sad about Pig or sad about other thing in Retirement Plan.
Well, I think it just speaks to like the kind of how reductive like our brains have got in the modern age, where like everything has to be. Do you know what I mean? It's this or it's this meets this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the kind of the one for Retirement Plan is like, oh, it's The Beach Bum meets John Wick. Do you know what I mean? Or it's like, I don't know, like Nobody is like, oh, it's Old Man John Wick. Do you know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, and it's great. That kind of gets people into it. But then like, I don't know, sometimes, like with Pig, that can end up with people being disappointed. They're like, oh, what? It's not Cage doing like John Wick with a pig. Do you know what I mean?
Like, yes.
Hogwick.
It's not Golden Hogwick, and it never was. And I think this movie does enough to be different from Collateral. Because I know with Collateral, like as you said, Tom Cruise is notably a shit throughout it. With this one, and to go back to the synopsis, it is more of that cat and mouse thing to be like, right, who is Cage? Joel Kinnaman, aka the driver, clearly seems to be someone. There's a bit more mystery about who is who in this film, and about how they sort of reveal that story as like the running time of the film goes on as well. I think if there's sort of a negative of it, you can kind of see where it's going. I don't think any to any real detriment of the movie. But as soon as Cage's character, the passenger, starts dropping these little hints saying, were you in Boston? When was the last time you went to Boston? It's like, oh, this is, and then Kinnaman's character replies, he says, like, oh, this is I was trying to do his accent, and it's a very weird Boston accent. I was very nearly doing a Christopher Walken there. He's like, so why were you in Boston? This is a very strange era this early in the day to make for you. Wow.
And then he yeets himself off of in a mall. I know that's New Rose Hotel. So getting my podcast confused there.
He might as well have done. But it goes like I think that there's going to be a reveal about the driver, aka David, aka James, aka David again. So I think like when the reveal happens, it's kind of like, yeah, I think I kind of saw this coming. Like, I'm not surprised that there was more to this. But I think he does enough over the runtime to sort of keep you interested. I think that largely comes down to the performances as well, that really carry a lot of the weight of this movie on the shoulders as well, I found.
Well, I feel like the kind of elephant in the room of this film is kind of the reveal. So should we get that out of the way, and then we can kind of like get into the meat and potatoes, or should we park that and get to it when it kind of comes up in the film? Like,
I don't mind. Well, should we say let's start at the start, where all things should be started,
yes,
as they say at the start committee. So we sort of pick up with Joel Kinnaman's character, and just to say, we'll probably be using his character's name interchangeably as Kinnaman, Driver, David, James. We'll try to explain them as we go along. I think Kinnaman speaks for itself, but he is advertised as the driver in this movie because he drives, and he's taking his son into a relative's house, and they talk about how they'd lost a child previous to him. And we understand that his wife is in labour, and he's trying to get to the hospital to take her an overnight bag because this new child to the world is imminent. The wife is in labour, so he drives to the underpass, and this is when we get introduced to Cage's character, aka the passenger.
Pick a card. I love it. Like what a kind of great opening line from Cage, right? He's like, pick a card. Like,
hey, pick a card. It's a very like bold opening. He gets in, his like, hey, like I'm not a cab driver. Like, obviously there's been some mistake here. He's like, pick a card. And as soon as he started going on about like pick a card, I just started thinking of Eddie from Deadfall. And I was like, Eddie's back, baby. I knew the Cage multiverse was real. Eddie continues right here and right now.
The Joker's hot. Is it? Like,
Joker's wild.
The Joker's wild. Yeah, that's it.
He was almost back.
There's some Eddie flavour in there. There's some Eddie, and there is a shot, and we'll get to it. There is a moment that Cage does, which is very Peter Lowe, and like, we'll get to it. I'm excited to get into some of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of these flashes of like, and I feel very on the nose, thought quite my own podcast name here. Very these like notable sort of Cage rage moments. Well, this is when things start, and it's quite of a striking appearance. I think obviously there's meant to be some kind of devil imagery, devil symbology, because there's references to devil and gods sort of sporadically throughout the movie as well. But he's got the red sort of suit jacket on. It's like a smoking jacket kind of thing.
I've got to know. So, like, apparently Cage turned up with that hair, right? That was like that was not discussed. He turned up to set with the dyed red hair. Did he turn up with that wardrobe as well, because that feels like that's straight out of the Nicolas Cage closet. Do you know what I mean? That's not like like if you saw photos of him just like milling about, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's Cage's. Like that's not a character.
Well, it has to be. I know this is in his wheelhouse to do. Again, there was another interview with the director Yuvo Adler that I read, and he was saying that like for about 6 to 7 weeks before filming, Cage was just like fully in on the film and just prepping. And he obviously exaggerating, but he was like, he probably sent me about 10,000 emails and texts saying like, what if we do the line this way? What about this line? What about this? What about that? And then he basically said he had so many ideas for his character that he described him as a volcano. He was just always erupting with ideas. Little volcano. So at this point, so I think knowing Cage the way that we do, I have to imagine that anytime you get Cage like locked in for your film, you don't need to hire wardrobe for him.
No.
He will turn up with just some absolute shit hot jackets.
Well, and like Cage lives in Vegas, so this just feels like he's probably like knocking about at home during the day or whatever, and then just be like, his wife probably went, "Oh, you're supposed to be filming that film tonight." He's like, "Oh shit, yeah, let's get this jacket on." Like the dye's just dried in his hair, and he's whipping out the door. Do you know what I mean? Like,
just run down the road. I was like, "Oh, you got red hair, you got this kind of like devil goatee going on as well." He's kind of like what, like 2 or 3 guns on him. He's got the hip flask. I think he says like he's got $2,000 boots. Have to imagine that those are Cage's own boots as well.
Yeah, they're like some kind of like leather cowboy boot kind of thing going on. Like they're very. It's all very. I love it. I love that. Like, but that feels like Cage's. I don't know, because at the same time, it doesn't. From the Cage we know as a man, it doesn't feel like him. It very much does feel like a character, and it's like I like the fact he's unnamed. Like we never learn his name right throughout the whole film.
No, we obviously the film only ever names him as the passenger, and then as the film goes on, I think you can sort of referentially call him the bookkeeper based on a story that he tells later on as well. So he sort of drops these sort of tidbits of information about this story, about why he's doing what he's doing to the driver as well. And then he's got the Boston accent, which I've seen some sort of criticism of the accent. I mean, obviously it's relevant to the story when you learn more about him and he says he's telling it, but what was your sort of thoughts on the accent as well? Because I mean, I don't think I minded it. I think my only issue is that if I tried to do a Boston accent, as we've seen, it's just Christopher Walken.
Well, I think with the Boston accent, you gotta. It's like I know your fucking mother. Like I always end up having to swear if I do a Boston accent. It's like there's something I don't know. It's almost like in the back of your throat. Do you know what I mean? Like it's fucking hard. Do you know what I mean? It's hard, like a cat. Like
if you are from Boston and you're listening,
go fuck yourself, eh? Go fuck.
I'm from Boston. It's the hard eyes, you motherfucker. It's
the hard eye. Give us a fucking you fucking fuck.
Can I get a couple of Boston creams? That's as far as my Boston knowledge extends to.
Right now, the listeners from Boston are like are tuning out like it's an episode of Take Me Out. Do you know what I mean? Boo, 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 boo. And anyone in Boston will not get that reference as well. So we've lost them. That was strictly for the British audience there.
Boston podcasters, reveal yourself. Paddy McGuinness taking us to capturing us in a building with flaming torches and pitchforks for what we've done to ruin the Boston podcasting community.
Let the Boston see the shamrock.
Let the Boston see the cream. God, if my other half can hear me now, who is from the north, she'll be very upset. I apologise if you're listening. There is context to this. But no, I didn't mind the accent. I saw some people sort of trashing it online, but I think at the start it's kind of like, oh, he's Cage with a bit of a voice. It's something different. I think it just takes like a minute just to be like, okay, now I'm tuned into it.
Yeah, at times he does drop it, but sometimes he drops it because he takes on a whole new affectation. Like he does, he almost like shoots himself in the foot because he does like an impression of, I can't remember the like old Hollywood star's name, like almost like a Humphrey Bogart type, and he starts speaking like this, like, and then like that kind of affects his voice from there on out.
Oh yeah, he says the name of the person, and Mike goes like, "Yeah, see, it's like
Yeah.
Robert. Is it Robert G something?" I could have sworn I made this as a note. I don't think I put it down, but just Google actor who says, "Yeah, see," and then this part of the podcast will make complete sense, and you'll look back on this retroactively and think, "Yes, your boys have smashed it yet again." But I think I was thinking about this. Like it seems to have been a while. I think since we've had.
I'm Edward G. Robinson. See,
Edward G. Robin. That's the Robert G. What was I talking about? Cancel me. I'm wrong again. I think with the exception of Renfield, because obviously that's kind of a well-established. Dracula's a well-established sort of character in the lore of like pop culture and horror and everything. But I suppose with like, dare I say, like an original sort of villain, it seems to have been a while since we've had that from Cage. When he was like the out and out sort of bad guy in like a new sort of venture.
Yeah.
And there is a genuine menace to Cage in this. I think as soon as he gets in the car and he's like, the driver's like, "Oh, I need to go and see my wife. It's a family emergency." And he gets the gun out and he's like, "I'm your family emergency now." I was like, oh, that's actually kind of chilling. That's actually kind of chilling.
And I think what Cage does to create menace through this character as well is like some of it is silence. Like he just like holds this silence for like a bit too long that kind of just makes you the audience, you can only imagine how that's making like the driver feel, in the fact that like you can see the cogs whirring in his mind, and it's almost like he's like overcome, like with he's like a man possessed, and yeah, he's kind of he's striking. It's like as soon as you kind of see him on screen, and you're like, what the first time watching it, I was like, I have no idea who this guy is, what his intentions are.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of and it's slowly passed out throughout it what they are, but even then, it's like it just keeps ramping it up higher and higher, and it's kind of the moments of levity as well for the audience are moments where we like being in that situation, you imagine are even more terrifying. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, this guy is totally unhinged.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what the film obviously puts a lot of its sort of stake into is the menace of Cage and the passenger sort of pushing this narrative forward about what is he going to do, what does he want, who is this guy, and I think that the interactions and I think you I can't remember if we said this on or off record, but a lot of my notes as well are very much quotes of Cage's throughout this movie as well, which just kind of capture all these different just elements just of him being a maniac, really, because obviously he says, "I'm your family emergency now." Then there's the part where they sort of stop for fuel and Kinnaman's character is trying to mouth help to that stranger at the gas station, but he doesn't get that help. And it's when he starts sitting in the front with him as well. It's like, it's kind of impersonal talking to the back of your fucking skull. And he's always got that gun on him. It's like, you just don't know when it's gonna pop.
Yeah, and I think the moment like it kind of elevates a bit higher as well is at the gas station where he kind of says like, "I could have been following you and your wife and your kids and stuff like that." And it's like then you realise like, oh, there's definitely something like even more personal here. Do you know what I mean? Like this could have been a guy just fucking with someone to begin with, and like this could all be a joke. But it's like obviously the driver is like, okay, I've got shit in my past, so maybe this could be someone that I'm like, do you know what I mean? That I've wronged or something.
Yeah, it's those first tidbits when he's asking if you've ever been to Boston before, when did you stop drinking? And he says, I went to Boston 15 years ago for business, and then it's like this is an error this early on the evening. It's not really like you. And then he starts telling this story that his mother's got lung cancer. It's kind of like, is that even real? And then these sort of new elements, and he's sort of drinking as well.
The moment that got me is when he asks him like when will I be able to go home, and Cage like replies, "Why would you assume you'll be ever going home again?" And it's like, fuck. Imagine being told that by someone. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's menacing, and there was. You get that kind of thing where the driver is trying to sort of relate to him, because obviously he doesn't know what he's in for, and he's trying to sort of give him this sort of relatable sympathy story and about how his mother was a victim of domestic abuse by his father. But then he's just like, because he gets cut off, he just goes, "Yeah, you fucking prick." It's like just like the dark absurdity of it, like. Just because he did cut him off, and I was watching that, I was like, I get why you did it, but that is actually kind of rude. Then it was just that very. I think those are the start of when the cageisms start to come in a bit more. But now, if I ever get, if someone interrupts me, I'm just going to go, "Nah, you fucking prick." no one's going to understand what I'm referencing.
I think if you want to shit someone up, you just need to start quoting like Friedrich Nietzsche, or do you know what I mean, like stuff like that. Like there's a moment like around here when I think it's after the phone call has happened, and like Cage is there just like a teenage boy, because like his wife's on loudspeaker and she's like moaning because she's in labour, and like Cage is going, she's like, "Who is that?" She's like, "Oh, I've just got the window open in the car. Don't worry about that, honey." And then, like, just afterwards, they're kind of having a conversation, and like Cage delivers this in like a whisper. I kind of had to rewind it a couple of times to find out what he said. And it's, "The devil may start to envy those who suffer too deeply and throw them out into heaven." And it's like, what the, like, do you know what I mean? If somebody, if you're in close quarters in a car and somebody said that to you, I'd be like, I would do what Joel Kinnaman does in this film. Then and there, I would open the door and throw myself out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame him for doing it. There's, I think one of the scenes that really sort of stands out for me is when, I think it's just before he jumps out of the car and does that sort of barrel roll all over the shop, where they get pulled over by the police, or that police officer, and Cage is kind of like antagonizing, like, is it, well, it's about the flow of traffic. The flow of traffic, if they're going over the speed limit, you've got to go over the speed limit so you don't stop crashing. And then the guy's like, "Look, you need to give me your license and registration, shut up." And then one of his quotes next that I really enjoyed was, "All they did was ask a question, and this big cock of a police officer asked me to get out of the car. I'm not going to reward that type of behavior." And I thought, yeah, you do you. You tell that police officer what's up. But then it turns into like, it's like, I wasn't expecting this sort of like this almost pulp level of violence, because he shoots that officer's face to mush.
Yeah.
Like, it was actually like, you know, when you don't expect it because the film doesn't set you up for that, and then like there's just bits of officer on the floor. I was like, oh, well, okay, shit. Because he pulls out a second gun and then loads the clip in his brain. I was like,
yeah, I love the fact that he's got this kind of like small kind of like, I don't know, like handbag gun, you could almost call it. Do you know what I mean? Very like dainty and like something that's easily concealable. And then in the back of his trousers, he's got this absolute cannon. He's like, "No, at close quarters, blowing a policeman's head off. I'm gonna need this Desert Eagle." Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it was like, okay, I think that was the point of the film that really sold me. Like, okay, right, that there's going to be an additional element of this movie that I wasn't sort of prepared for, and okay, like,
well, yeah,
the danger.
It's when the camera just cuts, right, and it shows you the damage of it. It's like, oh, okay, like this is going somewhere else. Like I thought, like, yeah, Do you know what I mean? Implied violence. Like, no, we're showing you the damage of this, which
Yeah.
we didn't have to do. Like,
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an extra layer of the film that I kind of wasn't expecting, but that's kind of one of those bits that kind of really hooks you back in. Like, okay, right, I'm in the car, like I'm good to go. And then it sort of gets to that bit that you were on about, where it's he jumps out of the car, he tries to crash it and escape. Obviously, he leaves his phone, and then the passenger sort of implies that he knows where his wife is in the hospital. But then there's like a lot of good quotes here as well, which is just more quotes in my notes.
It's when he's saying about like when his wife gave, because he's pretending he's like a guy who works at the gift shop, isn't he? Like in the kind of foyer of the hospital, and he's kind of saying like, yeah, when my wife gave birth, it's like it was golden shower time, like, your sex.
I wrote it down. He was like, let me get my best Boston accent. When my wife was pregnant, there was so much pressure on her bladder. It was bitching. There was a golden shower cascading all over the doctor's face. It was sexual, man. And then he's got the broken nose. Obviously, the car has crashed. And he's like, I dressed up for this night. Now you break my nose. I wanted to be 100% sex tonight, and you cut that in half. I'm now 50% sex. It's like, you motherfucker. Like, this like the number of times, like, I will say this much, obviously they said it was a meme worthy performance. I had to pause this film a lot so I could go back and make sure I had the exact quotes down.
Yeah,
I felt obliged to do it.
Yeah, I want it to be 100% sex. Like, that feels like it's something that's going to be pulled out, that clip, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Just like like that's going to become a meme of its own.
Get ready for the next big TikTok meme. Give it time. You know that thing that happens, like a film comes out and then it sort of goes away, and then like a year or two later, all the memes start popping up. But you know, start putting your little chips on this one. This is going to come back for meme purposes. I can feel it in my plums.
Well, because they get back in the car, like, because basically I think the driver realizes like it's kind of futile. Like, he potentially knows the room now. Like, I've got to carry on with this. And then Cage starts telling a story of like the Mucus Man.
The Mucus Man, yes.
And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what even spurs on that conversation?
He says something about like I think because he's got the broken nose, he starts talking about the fact that he's never been happy because of his sinuses, which leads him to this absolutely fucking absurd story about the Mucus Man, who is, I think from the description, so I thought he was describing Slender Man at first, but it's actually just worse. It's like it's a skinny bald man in a suit and tie. He has a briefcase full of boogers. And
it's amazing. What great alliteration! A briefcase full of boogers. No, that's the name of my first EP.
Briefcase full of boogers. He said the Mucus Man glides across the floor like a snail, and he sprinkled the boogers into his nose. And because of that, he's had issues with his sinuses ever since. And I wish. You know, I get it's a stressful situation. I wish the driver had asked more questions about the Mucus Man, because I've got more questions about the Mucus Man. Does he just visit once? Does he come back? How do you stop the Mucus Man?
I'm seeing him animated as well. You know, like a kind of like mucus relief advert. Do you know what I mean? Like some kind of like whipped up in an afternoon animation of just like this, like, man, the Mucus Man comes in, like
sliming.
And get Vicks, like vapor sticks to get rid of the Mucus Man. And he's as he gets destroyed.
December's here, and the Mucus Man is outside your door.
Yeah. Keep the Mucus Man at bay with Beecham's.
just a man with a briefcase full of boogers rattling at the window, going, foiled by Beecham's again.
That your briefcase full of boogers is not it's not currency here, sir. Like the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Your boogers have no power here, Mucus Man.
Just a big like, do you know what I mean? Like a big like prison doors shut on the Mucus Man.
I think this is when they're going to start like some kind of Nicolas Cage Avengers just for like creatures in his films, like him and the fucking Cheddar Goblin.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how it starts. They're going to get their own films, like the Mighty Mucus Man, the crazy Cheddar I don't know, the Great Cheddar Goblin. I don't know.
They're both slimy creatures as well. Cage has got these great little slimy creatures that follow him around. And like, I hope this film catches on just so we get some kind of like fan art from somebody who is a lot more like talented at art than either of us to give us an illustration of the Mucus Man.
Yeah, Nick Cage Fury is going together, making an Avengers team of just oddballs and creatures. Like I'm sure there'll be some kind of creature from a previous film that we've not.
I'm sure they can get Speckles from G-Force as well. Cage's mole.
Oh,
he
yes.
could be a part of the team.
It's me, the Mucus Man, and the Cheddar Goblin. Oh, yeah, this is the future of cinema. Get those LED walls that they have the car. Get the Mucus Man in there. Oh, go on. This.
Yeah, take your Mattel extended universe, stick it up your arse. We want the Cage, we want the Cage very minor referenced characters extended universe, please.
the literal the CMCU Cage minor characters universe.
Yes, please.
That's the one that I'm talking about. But then, sort of, unfortunately, they just dropped the Mucus Man from whence he came in a briefcase of boogers. And then they get to the diner. Actually, a very big, significant scene in the diner. We get a few more sort of characters into the fray, getting pulled into this sort of night of madness. And very, very quickly, we understand the passenger is very unhappy about the no substitutions rule, that you can't take a tuna melt and swap a cheese for another cheese. Or
I think he's got a point though, like, because he delivers a line saying you cannot put mozzarella on a tuna melt. Yeah, you can't.
I guess this is the question, like cheddar or mozzarella. And I'm not a tuna melt kind of guy. I'll put that out
I'm
there.
not a tuna man anyway, but I don't think a melted cheese in that kind. Do you know what I mean? Like a kind of something and cheese sandwich, like a toasty. It's cheddar all the way, baby.
I think I've had a Subway or two in my time, and I think you've got to go cheese and toasted. The slices, not the grated stuff. Yeah. Stick to the classics. Although there's a friend of mine back from school whose go-to was literally just a toasted tuna sandwich, no salad, no sauce, just bread. He once had a carvery, which was just gammon, boiled potatoes, and carrots with salt on it. This is a true story. This is.
Is that man now in prison? Because he sounds like he'd get on with the meals you get. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, absolutely no doubt in my mind that his lifespan is shortened and riddled with diabetes. It wouldn't surprise me at all. Like his eating habits were deplorable. Actually, riles. It takes a lot to rile me up, but I had to witness both of those meals firsthand, and I've never quite felt a rage like it. So yeah, I think Cage has got a point. I think substitutions need to be allowed. I don't care how diners run their business in Las Vegas. If you are a Las Vegas resident and you are au fait with the inner workings of the Las Vegas diner, get in touch and let us know. I'm very interested to know. I will max out my credit card to come to a Las Vegas diner and swap out a cheese as I see fit.
If not, I'll be in the kitchen with a gun to the chef.
I'll be taking all your rum and Molotov cocktail in the kitchen like there's no tomorrow.
Well, it's here that we get the story, right, of the bookkeeper,
yes,
James Sullivan, and the associate. Where like on first watch, is this when it became apparent that he was James Sullivan, or were you still in doubt?
I don't think there was too much doubt about it at this point. I think it was nice to get some more lore because we're probably about 40 or so minutes in by the time we get to the diner. I think it was more interesting of like, I think trying to piece together on the first watch if the bookkeeper was Cage or Kinnaman and sort of who was who. So I think the bookkeeper story, it keeps getting broken up by more events. There's like the substitution events, and then he's gone to the back to have a word with the chef, and then there's the whole sort of confrontation in the flaming car park afterwards as well. So I think I just about got the bookkeeper story at the start, and then when there was the reveal that Cage's character says that he was the bookkeeper all along. And this is kind of his whole thing about why he's specifically seeking out, I should say, David's character. I was like, okay. I mean, like I said, I didn't expect there was going to be a mind-blowing twist that was going to completely pull the rug from under me. But so, yeah, the story's pretty straightforward. It's moving in like a pretty linear direction. I can follow what's going on. That's cool. That's fine. I think it took a second watch to get to piece together the story because obviously it is broken up as well.
Yeah. Can we talk about the diner? Because the diner's got some of my favourite moments. There's one, Cage pulls this face, which is just like kind of, yeah, it's very like Peter Lowe-esque, where he kind of like, and he holds it for way too long, and he's just kind of like, it almost looks like he's broken.
Yeah.
And like, it's like terrifying. And I think like at one moment as well, like somebody tries to stand up and he just screams like, "Sit the fuck back down!" Like he just kind of like loses it. And like my personal kind of highlight moment is when he goes over to the jukebox and puts on a song, and it's like, "I like to do it, I like to boogie."
I love the Nightlife by Alicia Bridges.
And I love the fact that it's obviously the song is written into it. You've got Cage singing and dancing, and just like that's what I was alluding to earlier. It's like for us as an audience member, it's like this is a bit of levity where it's like if you were actually in a bar like or a diner, saw a guy like screaming at people and then did that, you would be like, I don't think I'm ever going to see my loved ones ever again.
I just wanted a tuna melt. Yeah. Now I'm about to get shot in the face. This is another night in Vegas, baby. That quote you mentioned, though, it goes back to one of his pet hates, which is being cut off. And I think David cuts him off again. And the quote just preceding that was, "You're always running off at the mouth. You got a motor mouth. There's a motorboat stuck in your mouth. Just shut up." And then he turns to that trucker who's across the way. He goes, "Sit the fuck back down." I was like, yes, that's what we come for. That's the price of admission right there.
Yeah. And then like, yeah, he goes and takes all their phones, right? He kind of like takes the truckers. Real ballsy move. He takes the kitchen staffs and throws them in the fryer. Like,
everything can be fried in this day and age. And then like there's the mother and the child that walk in, but yeah, it's that crazy scene. He puts on the song "I Love the Nightlife" by Alicia Bridges on the jukebox. He's strutting about, he's singing, he's just like jabbing his gun everywhere, like the Staying Alive, like Saturday Night Fever, like kind of dance move things. I
would love to know if there were any other choices of songs, like whether that was like Cage is like, no, I can work with this one. If they said like, we've got the, do you know what I mean? Like, because at one point as well, the name of this film, they're like, so are we going to have the Rolling Stones song in here at any point? Do you know what I mean? Like, you imagine it's like, when he goes over to that jukebox, you kind of do expect like the kind of like rolling drums from that, like, "Let me introduce myself, I'm a man." Like you expect, yeah. And he's like, "No, we got the nightlife, we got the boogie."
Yeah, there's not, outside of the title, not a Stones reference in sight. So either that's incredible restraint, or the Rolling Stones asked for a lot of money to have their.
I think it's the latter, but like I've got to mention, there is a needle drop at the beginning of this film I absolutely love, which is Scott Walker's "The Old Man's Back Again."
Yes.
like which kind of plays over like the title sequence at the beginning as like the driver is driving, like such like a kind of epic song. And it's like, if you can't get the Rolling Stones, like a bit of Scott Walker, yes please, like it's like real like, and I feel that the closing line to that song is hilarious. It's like, and his mother called him Ivan and then she died. It's like, what a fucking ballsy song.
I've got to say though, say what you want about this film, but the soundtrack's
Like the
very fucking it's very fucking good.
The actual score, which is by Ishai Adar, is kind of it's really great. It's kind of like it's got like an industrial, almost like Nine Inch Nails vibe to it, and you really like. There's a particular kind of score cue once the driver gets out of the diner and is kind of in the car park, and it is this kind of like all this squelch electronics and stuff like that, and it's kind of like tension ramping, but not in that kind of like a bog standard way. I kind of like the kind of electronic, industrial, like, and it kind of feels very Las Vegas, out in the middle of nowhere vibe to it. Like there is this, I don't know, this pulse of electricity throughout there, but then also this grungy darkness to it.
Yeah, like I like this kind of like meshing of. I think it goes back to what you said earlier, though, that it's not in the heart of Vegas, and it is this darker side of Vegas, sort of off the beaten track, and what we're going to see isn't what we're going to be used to, and things are going to be not quite the norm as well. And then the blue lighting and the red lighting, and then the soundtrack's very good. And then we've got we get the bit more of the bookkeeper's story, and sort of piecing together the story as it is sort of pieced together in the film. It's they work. I think it's some kind of crime family that the bookkeeper works for, but then they have some associates who are sort of stealing money from this family, and then they call in. So I think it's Kinnaman's character who we learn they call him to take care of the associate, but Cage,
James Sullivan.
Yeah, but Cage's wife sees the execution happen. I think that's how it goes down, and then she becomes a liability that they have to, air quotes, take care of. Then he sort of reveals like he went out to do a supply run. He comes back, and then when he does, his house was on fire with his wife and daughter inside, and it was another one of these quite chilling, unhinged lines. And he's like, but what really got me? It was the rabbits. You ever heard a rabbit scream before? And he's got that lucky rabbit's foot with him as well that he's like tapping on the desk when he's trying to get answers out of him. And I'm like, I've never heard a rabbit scream before. I don't think I want to hear a rabbit scream ever. I completely take you at your word that this is a horrifying event that you went through, and I can understand why you dyed your hair red.
The only way I can think I've ever heard a rabbit scream is in Watership Down, but I've also buried those memories to like the recesses of my mind, because that is not a film that should be for children, yet is.
No, that image of that slow motion rabbit just like diving, and you just know it was going, yeah. So, yeah, you fucking rabbit prick. is what I imagine was going down there. He has a sort of interplay with the waitress as well. I think the assumption is because she's been like a bit of a dick to him because she won't swap the cheese, and she's like, I'll tell you what, I'll bring you a block of cheddar and I'll grate it for you under the table. And when he starts killing people, he finds her in like the bathroom stall. He's like, hey, Ollie, you told me about the cheese, but that you being nice, or were you being sarcastic? And she just cries saying, I was being a dick. And then he walks off, and I think the assumption is that he let her live, because I know he says that he has a rule that he doesn't kill mothers or children. And the assumption is that he lets her live, but then he quickly starts Molotov in the kitchen and setting the entire diner on fire. So I assume she died in the flames, because you don't see her leave or anything. You just see that she's left alone at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, because we see the chef runs out the back and he shoots him, right? The trucker gets shot. We see the mother and daughter run out. Yeah, I would have assumed that he would have let her live just because, I don't know, it seems like, and it's this thing as well that he, and I think it's something that runs throughout the film, is he just wants honesty from people, and that's what he's kind of, that's his whole thing with the driver, right? So he just wants honesty, he wants the truth from him, and you would think the kind of like what we gather of his moral code and compass is, well, at least she has been honest with me, like in this situation, so I will let her live. Like maybe it is a kind of maybe it was just like something that they just forgot to film of her kind of running away or something. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe she did. Maybe let's think optimistically about this, Daryl. I'm going to assume that she's thriving, not to the best of her life, like because she witnessed this harrowing event, but at the same time, like she's getting by. Do you know what I mean? She's got herself into therapy, and she's like, that's it. I'm never working at the witching hour in a diner ever again.
I mean, quite the opposite. I have to assume she's under some burning rubble right now, just dead, perished, absolutely done, in a haze of Malibu rum Molotov cocktails. Is what I have to assume there. But prior to it just burning down, the passenger kind of forces this confession from the driver, aka David, that he is James and was James all along. And he sort of says that it's because he wanted to see his lizard face, like I wanted to see your true face, your lizard face, and that's why he didn't tell him earlier who he was. He wanted to, I think, like he said, he wants the honesty, he wants that confession that he feels like he's owed, because he's, you know, skipping ahead a bit, but in their final scene together, sort of out in the desert, when passenger, aka David, aka James, aka David again, is saying, you know, I got some closure tonight. I hope you, you know, might have been able to get some closure as well. I think in a very perverse way, this is like two haunted people trying to confront their past to get that closure and be able to move on in very sort of perverse ways.
Twisted way.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, the driver goes into that whole thing of like how he moved away. He had problems with his firstborn, like didn't make it, and then he saw that as punishment for what he had done. And then like he had his son, and then like he kind of felt like he was atoning for what he did. And it is this kind of, and I guess it's that thing, right, that if you ever live a life like that, like you can run away from it, but it's never done with you. Even if you're done with it, even if you're done with this life of crime, it will come back to you in the way that, like, even if it's the smallest person you could have wronged. Do you know what I mean? Like we see it in films like Carlito's Way. Like it's the smallest of kind of characters in that who kind of comes back and eventually seeks revenge. And like, this is kind of that just boiled down into, but this is a big thing. Like, and I think watching the second time, knowing the reveal, and I wanted to ask you about this, Daryl, is James is a cold motherfucker. The fact that like he must have known from the moment he saw the passenger get in who he was, why he was here, and the fact he can just like lie and lie and lie. Do you know what I mean? And like, to the point it's like, believe it. Like there are points you're like, when he's like, I will say whatever you want. I'm not the guy you're looking for. Like you believe him. Like you kind of like right up until like kind of the final, I don't know, 15 minutes, you are thinking, fuck, this is just a case of mistaken identity, or somebody who is really troubled, just looking for somebody to take like his pain out on. And then when it is revealed, it's like, it just really, do you know what I mean? You could like, I don't know, you could like imagine a version of this where like at the end we get like a montage of like when the moments when the passenger is saying stuff to the driver, like the moments we didn't see his face when he was driving, he's kind of like doing like a wry smile, like,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like recontextualizing everything we've seen. Like it's kind of on a rewatch. I was like, oh, he really fucking sells this, and it is that thing, and I think it plays into the title, right? It's sympathy for the devil, and it's kind of like that rug pull at the end. It's like, well, you almost have sympathy for this guy who is literally the personification of the devil in Cage's character, but then you've also had sympathy throughout the whole film for a guy who like literally was the devil in a past life. Like his job was to like enact like vengeance and like go and like, do you know what I mean, be a fixer and kill people. So it's that kind of like double-edged thing where your sympathies are kind of questioned, like should you be feeling sympathetic towards either of these characters?
Yeah, that's kind of really things. Like I said before, I don't think there was a massive surprise in the fact that Joel Kinnaman's character wasn't exactly who he said he was. But then they've had that sort of fight and shootout in the diner, and they've driven back into the desert. The police are coming. Kinnaman's character sort of flipped the car, and there is that sort of that cold-hearted reveal where David is sort of saying he admits that he killed the passenger's wife and daughter, and he started drinking himself to death because he couldn't cope with it. And then they lost their firstborn. He's like, well, this was God evening the score. But then I got my first son, and this was, I think he alludes to the fact that his first son was essentially the passenger's daughter reincarnated or something like that, and giving him like a child back. And then I certainly think like on the last viewing, well, second viewing as well, it kind of ties back into that quote you mentioned earlier, the whole for the devil may start to envy those who suffer too deeply and throw them into heaven. Because it's almost this thing like, in their own way, they've both been suffering so much that they've had to come out the other side of that and have this very twisted sense of redemption. So by the end of it, he's like, oh, well, this weight has been lifted. And that's that kind of unsettling thing of, he's choked out Cage's character and sort of killed him. The police are coming. He shoots like 2 police officers as well to sort of frame Cage's character further for that. And then he sort of sat by the car just telling to himself, I'm David Chamberlain, I'm David Chamberlain, I'm David Chamberlain. And then they turn up and he put his hands up and he's asking for help. And then the film ends. And it's like what you said as well. Like, I think it does enough at the end with that reveal, that sort of reveal, I should say, really, where it's like, oh, like you're both pricks, or you have been pricks in previous life. Obviously, you're both still hurting, but they've been keeping up this lie for so long, and it sort of ties into that quote, ties into this title of the film, that both of them have been through hell. Both of them are sort of devils in their own way as well. But then both of them sort of feel, I don't know, sort of righteous in this sort of path of revenge and redemption that they're taking as well. And it gives you that sort of food for thought, like, oh, well, I guess I hope he makes it to the hospital in time for his daughter's birth.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like I remember like the first time watching it as well, and like when the 2 cops are shot, I was like, well, the last we've seen of Cage, he was kind of like, do you know what I mean? Like fucked from the crash.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was kind of a bit of a shock. I was like, oh fuck, it's David who's done that. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I think that solidified it to me right then, that like, oh no, he is the guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, and you get hints of it as well, right? Like there's that moment where he pops his shoulder back into place and he's like, what kind of blue collar scumbag can do that? And he's like,
yeah. I think there's enough small hints peppered throughout to sort of bring it to, I'd say it's quite a satisfying conclusion. I think overall this was like a fun sort of like, dark and slightly humorous thriller. It had some elements of like sort of the flashiness to it, and I would say overall, like, I did enjoy this. I think if we're speaking honestly, I don't know that it's going to be on anyone's, top 10 movie lists at the end of the year. But for what it is, and for a complete distraction from Barbenheimer as well, this is not the worst way to spend 90 minutes of your time. And I watch it again.
Well, and it's kind of, this is the type of film that people say aren't really made anymore. Do you know what I mean? Because I don't think it's like, I don't know, like, I don't think it's like all out schlock. Do you know what I mean? Like, at all. Like, it's got some, I don't know, it's got elements of it, like with the kind of big cagey quote stuff and stuff like that. But like, I think it's just like a kind of taut, kind of adult thriller, like that kind of knows its budget and uses it really well to just make something that's kind of really tight and like tense. And it's like, that's what you want. That's sometimes what you want. Do you know what I mean? It's perfect kind of like Friday, Saturday night kind of, do you know what I mean? Well, I'm a bit moody, it's raining outside, like get this on like after a couple of beers or whatever, and you absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, Cage is 2023 so far. We've had The Old Way, Renfield. Now we've got Sympathy for the Devil as well. We can have The Retirement Plan coming up. And I'll say, like, I enjoyed The Old Way. I really enjoyed sort of Renfield. I enjoyed this as well. So as far as I am concerned, this is a 3 for 3 output of positive, thumbs up Cage movies for me.
Yeah. It's just turned out to be like a, considering, on my podcast earlier this year, we had a conversation about like, what does the future entail for Cage? And like, so far, this has been, like a like a kind of great year. We only got one Cage film last year. And we, as you said, like on this year, we're hitting 3 for 3. Will we hit 4 for 4? I mean, only time will tell.
Well, September's just around the corner at the time of recording, so we will see what happens with The Retirement Plan. But yeah, I think overall, I suspect this film is probably going to get something of a limited release. But if you get a chance to check out Sympathy for the Devil, definitely do so. It's a fun way to spend 90 minutes. Cage, not to try and overhype it too much and give the wrong impression, but Cage does give one of his most quotable performances in years. Joel Kinnaman is great. He's solid throughout this. This is a 2-person movie. I think it does like the right amount of humor, the right amount of tension, and this is like fun. This is a good movie. You'll have a good time with it. So if you can, check this one out if it's local to you or on demand. Or I think the Blu-ray's just been announced to come out towards the end of September 2023 as well. So try and pick this one up. Certainly go and check it out. I would say it's a thumbs up from this guy.
And a thumbs up from this guy as well. But before we wrap things up, Terrell, a few questions I always ask on the pod. One of them is we've talked about Cage's hair in this. Is it good? Is it good hair? Or is it bad? Does he have bad hair?
You know what? I think it's the first time we've seen Cage with colourful hair. So I'm going to say, broadly speaking, it's good. It's at this time he's got a good cut. It works for him. I like the red hair. I think it's different. It's one of the most different hair that we've had. And then we did have a period of time where I think it was just dyed jet black for some of the straight to DVD fare. I would arguably put it up there. I don't know. I always joke about this on the podcast of doing a definitive Nicolas Cage hair ranking at some point. But I would say, obviously without re-diving into all his movies, that this is the potential for some top 10 Cage hair.
It's good. It's a little bit on the nose with the title of the film and the character. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the devil, man. It's got red hair. Let's go. Like,
it's the devil, baby. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I got to agree with you. Like, there's nothing egregious about it. Like, it's kind of, apart from the kind of on the nose stuff, it's just kind of like, I like it. He took a punt and he kind of like looks wild, like with it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, took a risk and it paid off, I say.
The second one, and I think this one's going to be, does he do a crazy voice? Again, something we've kind of talked about, but is it crazy? Is it crazy, or we Because you know what I'm talking about here. This isn't in the realms of Peter Lowe or the Peggy Sue Got Married voice.
I mean, it's not quite as nasally as that or sort of full Peter Lowe. And I don't think it'd be fair of me to say, yeah, the Boston accent is crazy. Yeah, I completely agree. It's a crazy, crazy accent. I mean,
Well, it's only crazy when I do it.
it's only crazy when pretenders like us try to do it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's crazy, but he does have sort of those, Cage inflections that we've come to know so well. So, and it's not really a sliding scale to say yes or no in the crazy voice. I would lean towards yes because what he does with it is crazy, but the Boston accent in of itself is not crazy.
Yes. And the last one, I think everyone knows the answer to this one as soon as I ask it. Does he freak out in this movie?
Well, if some of the quotes that we have down have not quite sold it for you, yes, and yes. There are some good Cage freakouts in this. If you've been missing, and you've been wanting for a Cage freakout for some time, this is the movie to jump back in on. Like, as we've said, like, all jokes aside, probably about 20% of my notes on the movie are just Cage quotes in this one as well. So, yes, I say yes to the hair, yes to the voice, yes to the freak out. 3 for 3 films, 3 for 3 on the questions. Let's fucking go.
Let's go. Great. Well, that's that business done and dusted.
Delightful. So obviously with that, the big questions out of the way, it is time to wrap up here on this episode and covering Sympathy for the Devil. Another, I'm going to say another good Cage film for 2023. So as we wrap up here, obviously left to say, Petros Basilivas, thank you very, very much for joining. A pleasure as always. And for the listeners, where can we find you and what are you up to? What's going on?
You can find me on all the usual places, so Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that with the pod, which is Caged In, which is like, well, yeah, just inadvertently take a little bit of a hiatus just whilst I sorted out some dental issues and been busy with the other podcast, Getting to Know You, which I host along with yourself, Daryl, which is a lot of fun. We're kind of in the throes of our first season, and it's kind of been an absolute hoot to record that. I'm looking forward to getting the rest of that out for everyone to hear and kind of get involved. Yeah, so if you're not listening to that, listen to that. But you can find both of those on all the socials, whatever they're called at this point. So you can find Caged In at Caged In Pod, and you can find Getting to Know You at Defoe You Pod on all of those places. So yeah, just get involved, jump aboard the Defoe commotion train, hop on that carriage that's marked Caged In as well, and we'll have a party.
Amazing. See, on these trains, the journey, if you're on the journey to True Cage Nirvana or you're on the Defoe commotion train, we have intermingling carriages and all the more room for everyone who wants to get on board. So all the links in the description, as ever. It's left me to say thanks again to Petros for joining. A pleasure as always. We will catch you in the next one. But until then, and as always, keep on caging. It's all you have to do. And there you have it. Sympathy for the Devil is in the bag. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed the film if you've had a chance to see it as well. Obviously, a spoiler-filled episode. We wanted to leave it a few days, about a week after the film came out, just to give people a chance to see it as well. So it gave us the ability to dive into that one in full spoilerific detail. But like I said, really enjoyed that one. Obviously, a good chance it's going to get swallowed a little bit by Barbie and Oppenheimer at the time of release. But I think there's a lot of caginess, a lot of caginess in there to enjoy. So I hope you'll find something in there to enjoy as well. Now, moving on to next week, we will be bringing you finally the episode on Renfield. The episode is recorded. It is coming soon. I was joined by the returning Lauren Malisi to discuss Renfield. It was a lot of fun to have Lauren back on the podcast, and I'm very excited for you to hear all that one as well. So to keep in touch, keep abreast of all things Cage Rage, again, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the usual suspects, all the links in the description down below. And if you've enjoyed the episode, feel free to like it, share it, retweet it, give it a 5-star rating on your listening platform of choice. Helps the podcast grow, helps more people find it, and you'll be doing your bit to support a little old independent podcast as well. But we shall see you next week for more Cage Rage and Nicolas Cage podcast. Take care. Bye-bye. Until then.
Cage Rage.